So as this group is hopping on,
hi everyone.
Hi. We're still waiting. Are we waiting on anybody else, you guys think?
I think this is it.
Okay, cool. Well, we're 5 minutes in, which is great because we can get started. So I did want to share a little bit about this awesome group that you guys are about to hear from. I'm extremely fortunate to know and work with these young change makers nearly on a daily, if not every other daily basis. But I couldn't be more thankful that they all were able to join us. So, without further ado, these are members of the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council, and they're in the climate change group specifically. So I am so fortunate to be able to work and mentor, although I feel like I'm the one mostly being mentored by all of you. But I'm so grateful and thankful for all of the work that you do. So a little bit about the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council, which if you're watching this later, applications are open in July, so definitely check that out. But the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council was created to help develop World Oceans Day into a unique way to connect and unite young people around the world. Their goal is to be a global network of leaders that help shape our vision and actions for a better future with a healthier ocean that sustains us all. They're from different places around the world. So the council is made up of 25 members from 21 different countries around the world. So if you're aged, if the cutoff is 22, so definitely check that out when applications are available. But what they do is they basically work together, on a global project, if you will, where they come together and look at ways, we can all be uniting for ocean action. And not just on World Oceans Day, which just happened, which is crazy. That World Oceans Day just occurred on June 8th for those who, don't know when World Oceans Day is, but they're uniting action year round. And so I'm, really excited to hear what you guys are talking through and working on. So this session specifically, these 3 council members from the climate change group specifically are going to test your knowledge on climate change solutions, science, conservation, ocean fun facts, and more. This quiz game will allow everybody just a chance to discuss the issues and the solutions in a way that is fun and interactive. They'll be using the same thing that I just did. So if you are now Kahoot pros, you're gonna be sharing your Kahoots with the world after this. But without further ado, take it away.
Thanks, Bailey, and thanks so much for the rest of the sessions. It's been really cool so far. Also, it must be really, really late/early for you, so you're a hero. Yeah, hi everyone, and hope you've been enjoying the live stream. Yeah, as Bailey said, we're from the World Oceans Day Council. My name's Rebecca, and I'm from Singapore, and we have other people in the council from all over the world, and our group in particular has been working on a campaign to draw the link between the ocean and climate change. And we've created a resource for people to refer to for ways to live a more climate-friendly lifestyle. So I just wanted to flag that up. That should be coming out real soon. But for today, I'm just going to let Porty and Lydia introduce themselves, and then we'll get going with the quiz. Lydia?
Yeah, hi. My name is Lydia. I am from Austria, but I'm currently living in Sweden. And well, I hope y'all enjoy our little quiz and have fun and also learn something playing it.
Hi everyone, and I'm Courtesy, and I am from Australia, although currently I'm on Fraser Island, which is the world's biggest sand island. It's a really pretty time of day here, so I might just flip you around. And if you can see out there, it's sunset. There's a few dingoes around the corner just there. And if you don't know what dingoes are, they're a wild Australian native dog, and this is the last place in the world that has them purebred. So there's a little introduction from me, and I hope you all enjoy our Kahoot.
Yeah, and then, yeah, thanks guys. And also just wanted mention our other members are Gabrielle, who's from Canada, and she'll be giving a session later on. So stay tuned for that. We have Yusuf from Uganda, Paula from the Philippines, Sophie from New Zealand, of course, and yeah, they've all helped with the quiz. So even though they can't be here, yeah, they've helped massively. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen now, and then we can start the quiz. I have way too many tabs open as usual. Just give it a second. Okay, so this is the quiz, and hopefully after Bailey's quiz, you will all be masters in knowing how to join them. So I should say that we've got 4 rounds for this quiz. The first round, Portsy will be leading on some marine fun facts. And then later on, we'll be joined by Bailey, who will be leading the quiz on marine fauna and megafauna in particular. And Gabrielle actually helped with those questions, but she can't be here. And then I'll be leading the round on marine conservation and just some facts about that. And then finally, Lydia will be closing with a round on climate change. So we'll just give people a few seconds to join, a few minutes to join.
I love the Kahoot music.
So good. So just to add, we will be just sort of talking about the different questions as we go along. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try and cover them as we go through the quiz. Maybe we'll just give a few more seconds and then we'll start.
These are really creative nicknames. Like, I love them. I don't think I would be that creative.
No, I think it's pre-assigned. So
Is it?
I think so.
Okay, I haven't played a Kahoot in a while.
Should we get going? Okay, I'll start, and Portsy, why don't you start? So.
Yes, so the first section that we're going to be doing is a few animal fun facts just to get us into it. So to start off with, which animal has been in existence the longest? And there's dinosaurs, sharks, jellyfish, and crocodiles. Oh, surprising. Yes, jellyfish have actually been around for more than 650 million years, which when I was researching surprised me as well because I thought it would be crocodiles. Okay, how long can sea hares grow? And there's a range of 25 to 100 centimeters there. Yes, so sea hares can actually grow up to 75 centimeters and weigh up to 13.6 kilograms, which shocked me a lot because I have most certainly never seen a sea hare when I've been diving or anything. I actually based this sea hare off the Californian brown sea hare, so definitely in that area, but I know that there are many different species around the world. Like I've seen a few smaller ones here in Australia diving on the Great Barrier Reef, but none to that size. Okay, how many teeth can some sharks shed and grow over their lifetime? And there's 5,000, 1,000, 10,000, and 30,000. Yes, that also surprised me quite a lot because I knew that it was a fair few because they have so many rows of teeth. But some requiem sharks, which include tiger and lemon sharks, are actually capable of growing and shedding up to 30,000 teeth in their lifetime, which is hard to imagine.
Yeah, I have to say I was so confused at first because I thought it was how many can they. I didn't know they shed them at first, so I was just like, do they have 30,000 teeth in their mouth?
Yeah. It'd have to be more like bristles. Okay, so what is the leg to length span of the largest crab species in the ocean, which is the Japanese spider crab? And there's a few different size ranges in there. So Japanese spider crabs have actually had their leg span recorded at 3.7 meters. And when I learned that, I am surprised I didn't have any crazier dreams afterwards because I cannot imagine seeing a crab that's over double my height just walking up to me. Nudibranchs are my favorite species. So for me, I just thought it'd be interesting to include this one, and it is how many nudibranch species have been discovered around the world. Yes, so the answer is 2,000, and there are actually more and more species being identified and classified every day. And if you are lucky enough to come into contact with these amazing, colorful critters, they are incredible. They're one of my favorite marine species. They're just so intriguing and gorgeous, and yeah, I love them. Okay, what male sea creature carries and gives birth to its offspring? Seahorse, beautiful. Everyone got that one. So I'm pretty sure that the female, once the eggs have been fertilized, they get transferred to the male, and then he carries and gives birth to them. He doesn't actually produce the egg. Yes. Okay, what is the most venomous marine animal? And there's stonefish, blue-ringed octopus, cone snail, and the box jellyfish. Correct. It is the box jellyfish, which is really impressive given their tiny size and the fact that they look transparent in water.
Also, if you guys want to answer out loud, what's the coolest thing you all have seen in nature? That would be awesome.
I think for me, the coolest thing, like in my memories, I mean, I've seen so many cool things in nature because nature is cool. But I was on the coast of Scotland, and there was a huge lion's mane jellyfish, like many meters long, and it was feeding on a huge swarm of little tiny moon jellies. So the water was just full of jellies, but there was this one huge one, and it was really amazing to see.
Yeah, I think same as Lydia, there's just too many cool things to name. But to be honest, when I think about it, the first thing that always comes to mind would be what really got me interested in marine biology, which was when I was, I think, like 8 or something, and I was in Thailand, and we went to this intertidal walk, and then the guide was telling us about the symbiosis between a goby fish and a shrimp. So how the goby fish is sort of stands watch for the shrimp while the shrimp digs them a burrow. and it's just this symbiosis, and both of them go live in the burrow. And to this day, that's still like the coolest thing ever, because that kind of symbiosis to evolve, to me, is just mind-blowing.
That's so cool, Rebecca. I think for me, probably one of the first times I went night diving, it was off Heron Island in the Great Barrier Reef, and just seeing how luminescent all of the coral was, and the way it like glows and just catches like the like moonlight almost. I think that was just incredible. Like, it was a completely different world that you don't like. Being underwater on a reef is insane as it is, but then seeing it at night when everything is just like iridescent, it was incredible, I must say. Yeah. What is the fastest fish species? This one I found to be quite controversial. It was difficult to come up with a defined answer based on some research and talking to people who apparently all knew the answer. So I heard that it was the sailfish, and that it's been recorded at 109 kilometers per hour, or 68 miles per hour. So if you can imagine it swimming next to you at the quick speed of driving your car, I think that that's pretty incredible.
I think why the controversy is that I feel people compare like instantaneous speed versus sustained speed. So I think someone else told me that the sustained speed of other fish is faster, but then sailfish is that when they're sort of predating, or when they're trying to catch their prey, that's the fastest speed they can go.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Portsy. And Bailey, do you want to take over now, and we'll have the next round?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Portsy. All right, let's get it going. Which factor determines sea turtle sex? I actually know this one because I just did a whole thing on sea turtles, if you were watching earlier. Yay! For those who guessed nesting temperature, which was 2 people. Also, my microwave is going off. If you hear that in the background, don't think it's a fire alarm. But basically, yeah, it's nesting temperature. So basically, when the turtles, the females lay their eggs, the temperature actually determines whether their eggs are more males or females, which is really, it's just insane that that's how nature works sometimes. That's some of the coolest things that, I think, these species can do. Man, the bronze badger. So which of the following ocean areas isn't known to be a massive whale sanctuary? Wow, I guess I'm kind of shocked by this. Some of these are new to me as well, for the group who put this together. But I guess I didn't realize this. In thinking, I don't know why I thought they would be mostly in the Arctic Ocean, or there would be a lot. But that's a really cool answer. Do you, Lydia or Rebecca, have any thoughts on that?
I think it's something that we should change, because there's also a lot of whales in the Arctic Ocean, a lot of orcas as well, and there's especially the Arctic is very vulnerable to other stressors such as climate change. So that can be a next step on our conservation journey.
Yes.
Yeah, I think people think that the idea, sort of the population dynamics of whales is actually a really good success story for conservation, because they were massively overfished in the 20th century, in the 1900s. And yeah, I mean, my project in my undergrad was on whales in the Southern Ocean and in Antarctica, the Antarctic waters. And yeah, it was just seeing how those populations have really shot up since the moratorium on whaling was passed. So I think that, yeah, for people who maybe are feeling a little bit down about marine conservation in general, yeah, if studying whales has really shown that, you know, if people work together and if countries come together and pass laws, that some animals really can be saved and conserved.
Next one. Which is the world's biggest marine protected area? That's really great question. It is the Coral Sea Marine Park in New Caledonia. That's such a great question. Marine protected areas, you know, there's varying levels of what it means for an area, especially in the ocean, to be protected. And so I really do urge all of you watching to really look into what is a marine protected area. And actually, if you hang on for the session afterwards, we're going to have a special group talk a little bit more about marine protected areas themselves, but it's critical, right? That, you know, we start not only protecting our land and creating space for it to naturally flourish again, but it's really important for that to happen in our ocean as well. And not many people realize, because it is so vast, that, you know, it isn't protected, or how do you protect it, or how do you, and those are all questions that some really awesome people have figured out and have put marine protected areas in place. So definitely Google that, check that out if you don't know what a marine protected area is. And as always, you know, throughout the Youth-A-Thon session, you'll see a little QR code with the 30 by 30 petition, which is asking our world leaders to protect at least 30% of our land and water by 2030. Oh, dynamic panther is coming up. How are whale sharks naturally tagged in order to study their population dynamics? Oh man. By looking at their unique spot patterns. Wow, this is not a question or an answer that I knew. I was kind of guessing along with everybody. That's really fascinating. I know that Gabrielle, you know, worked on this, so, you know, hopefully we can hear from her later on that. Which seabird is the greatest cage strategist species? So great longevity and slow population growth. It is the great albatross, which is a really neat species if you all haven't checked that one out too. Next question, which of the following is not a major threat to seabirds? Yay, we got some people guessing correctly. It is collision with fishing vessels. I want to say C, but it's yellow. So the yellow answer is the correct one. What group of animals is known to be experts in, is that lunge feeding? Lunge feeding? Okay. It's the blue answer. No, it's the yellow answer, but most people guess blue. Ha ha ha. The rorquals? I've never heard of that in my life.
The type of whale, so as opposed to the toothed whales, which what the orcas belong to, rorquals are sort of baleen whales. So by lunge feeding, I think it's, you know, when when you see those videos of the whales just coming up and getting massive amounts of krill.
That's why we need this quiz, so that we all know these things. I'm going to share this with all my friends. All of these great facts. Okay, which seabird has the ability to perform about 200 to 300 dives per day and spends about 22 to 57% of their time submerged? For those of you who guessed the blue answer, it is the king penguin, one of my favorite species on this planet. Which of the following statement doesn't describe whales' function roles in ocean ecosystems? Oh, this is a good one. They're all good though. Okay, it is red. I was thinking, I'm like, there's no way it is not the red answer. So it is red, the red answer. So blubber used to warm up other species. That would be quite interesting, however, if it did do that. We're sailing through these questions. I hope you all are having fun and learning stuff. So how many senses do sharks have? Whoa, senses. It is 7 senses. So question to you, Lydia and Rebecca, do you know what those 7 senses are? They are...
I think they can sense electrical impulse near them, so they are really good at spotting prey, even if they don't see it. But I'm not sure what the 7th one is.
Oh, that's totally good. They are Googleable, is what. Search those if you are. I'm gonna search those, and I will put it in the chat.
Okay, great. I think that's it for the marine megafauna round. So we're going to take a bit of a turn, and Lydia and I will be talking about less marine biology and more on marine conservation. So I'll be starting around on conservation principles and maybe facts. Oof, social raven, speeding up. Okay, so this question: what ecosystem is a source of blue carbon, which are sources of ecosystems that draw down large amounts of carbon from the atmosphere? Oof, yep, all of the above. To those who put mangroves, that is true, but seagrasses and kelp forests are also known as sources of blue carbon. And this is something that's come up a lot recently in conservation policy, because these ecosystems store huge amounts of carbon through their plant matter and things like that. And it's really important that we continue to conserve them so that they can continue to act as carbon sinks. So for the next question, how much does all the trash in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch weigh? Yep, it's 88,000 tons. And I don't know about you, but I can't even imagine that. Like, I think, how much does an elephant weigh? And how much is, I mean, this is even an estimation. Who knows how much it is? And considering all the microplastics that's in particulate matter in the Pacific Garbage Patch, who knows whether it's even a bigger number than this. So next question is, what percentage of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions are absorbed by the ocean? So this would be including those blue carbon sources that we talked about. Yeah, so it's approximately 31% of all greenhouse gas emissions that have been released by human activity. So that's through the burning of fossil fuels, through beef agriculture or agriculture of other kind of crops. So, I mean, if you think about it, without the oceans, our atmosphere will have a third more of the greenhouse gas emissions that we already have. So yeah, oceans are huge carbon sinks as well. What is the world's most biodiverse marine ecosystem? Yeah, it's coral reefs. So coral reefs are found around along the tropics, and I think they include something like a quarter of all marine life. So huge amounts of biodiversity. Yeah. Lydia and Bailey, have you guys been to coral reefs at all? I imagine you have. No.
I haven't, sadly. I really want to, but there is one coral reef in Sweden, one cold water coral reef, right between Sweden and Norway, and it's about the most biodiverse place in all of this region. So I really want to go there soon.
That's incredible.
No, that's cool. I would honestly be so like nervous. I'm also like not coming from a landlocked like community. I'm also not great at like diving or so I would love for someone to like take me to go see some coral reefs, but I've never seen one in real life. Rebecca, have you?
Well, yeah, because I'm from Singapore, so we've got coral reefs, and around us in Southeast Asia, we're kind of just in the middle, just at the edge of the coral triangle, which is the world's highest concentration of coral reefs. So I've been very, very lucky that coral reefs have kind of been on my doorstep. And yeah, I mean, really, that's kind of where my love for the ocean started, and my sort of passion for ocean conservation, because coral reefs have suffered so much bleaching and other human impacts like sedimentation over the past few years. And I think that's why, this is one of the reasons why our group has been focusing so much on climate change, is because climate change is inextricably linked and will affect the oceans, particularly coral reefs, because, they have shown intolerance and they bleach, which means that, they can't survive at temperatures even a degree Celsius higher than their current temperatures.
And there's also, it's not just that the water is getting warmer, but also there's marine heat waves. So the same way that we have heat waves on land, there's heat waves underwater. So there's very high temperatures under a certain period of time, and then the corals bleach. And if that happens too often, then they cannot restore themselves before the next heat wave comes. So that's also a big problem for the Great Barrier Reef also.
It's a shame that Portsea had to drop off. Her reception dropped, but she lives near the Great Barrier Reef, and they've just kind of ended their third mass bleaching event in the past 5 years. So yeah, I'm interested to hear from her what the state of the corals are like at the moment. And apparently this one was pretty severe. And
yeah, because since 2016 we've lost half of the Great Barrier Reef.
Yep, exactly. It's scary. So another climate change related question: how much has our sea level risen since 1900? Yeah, it's between 16 to 21 centimeters, and I guess it's kind of inconsistent because the waters are rising differently in different places, and that's due to sort of thermal properties, but then also the kind of topography of the seafloor. So what, the sort of ups and downs of the seabed and the coast. But I mean, if you think about that, that's a huge amount of sea level rise in the past 120 years. And I mean, it's projected to come to just intensify, also considering how many people live near the coast. Yeah, it's scary. Right. How long does a disposable plastic bottle take to decompose in the ocean? Yeah, 400 years, and that's just it's just a guess. It's just an approximation. But if you think about that, that means that every plastic bottle that has ever been made is still in is still on the earth. I suppose even if it'll just take years and years to decompose, and much more if it's in the ocean, because then it can cause marine pollution and marine debris. So I think dynamic panther, you are soaring ahead. So according to the World Database on Protected Areas, how much of the ocean is within a marine protected area currently? Yeah, 7.44%. So that's kind of tying into what Bailey said just now about the 30 by 30 petition, which is on the World Oceans Day website. But yeah, people are really trying to fight for greater marine protection to reduce those threats of fishing, overfishing, and also coastal development, things like that. And I think it's really important that we continue to push for these protected areas, especially in places with high biodiversity and places that are highly threatened. I think I've got one more question. Yeah, and this one's just a random one, but what was stingray venom once used for? Yep, anesthesia, arthritis treatment. I thought it was pretty clever when I thought of that, and I seem to have fooled two of you, so I'm proud of myself. But yeah, isn't that wild? I mean, it just kind of makes you think about the different ways that marine species have contributed to our sort of development and human society. And it makes you think that it's equally important that we protect these species, for their biodiversity value, but also because so many people in the world rely on fish, rely on marine species for medicine and treatments. I don't think they use them for anesthesia anymore, but that's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's me, and now I'm going to hand it over to Lydia, who's going to talk a bit more about climate change.
Yeah, exactly. So that is our last round that we have today. Where we're going to start with which one of these is not a greenhouse gas. And I did not include the very obvious one. That's correct. Yeah, true. You are correct. Ozone is actually a greenhouse gas, but it doesn't really contribute a lot to global warming. But hydrogen is not a greenhouse gas because it's just two same atoms that don't have any electrical charge, so they cannot absorb that infrared, which then traps the heat on the planet. But all these other ones are actually greenhouse gases. About sea level rise, what's the main reason that is making sea levels rise? Why is it actually happening? Yeah, that is actually a common misconception, that because the Arctic is melting, which is sadly happening, that makes sea levels rise. However, the Arctic doesn't have a continent beneath it. The Arctic is just swimming ice, and that already takes up the same volume that it takes up when it melts. And glacier water also contributes to sea level rise, but the largest factor is that warmer water takes up more space because it has a lower density, and that's a lot of water in the ocean that then takes up more space, and that's why sea levels are rising primarily. We've got a race going on here. Which of these is not an effect of human greenhouse gas emissions on the ocean? Yeah, most of you got it correct. So the ocean is of course getting warmer because it absorbs a lot of the heat that we produce through our greenhouse gas emissions. The oceans have actually absorbed over 90% of the excess heat that has that we have caused because of human man-made climate change. So that is huge. Imagine if they didn't, then we would have 10 times the excess heat on land. They're also getting more acidic because, like Rebecca said before, they are absorbing a lot of the CO2 we're emitting, and that's basically making the oceans, that's basically carbonic acid when it dissolves in the ocean. So the same thing you have in a fizzy drink. And that's making it, for example, also more difficult for calcifying species that have shells and other body parts of calcium carbonate to build their shells. And one of these species is also corals. So that is also a driving factor of why corals are having a much harder time. And because of warming, the oceans are also losing oxygen, which makes certain parts of the ocean so-called hypoxic zones, where there's not enough oxygen for most species to survive or thrive, for that matter. But the salt level is staying the same. The West Antarctic ice sheet is an ice sheet that's on land. How much would that contribute to sea level rise if it were to melt completely? Okay, nobody got it right. I think that's the first question. So to put that into perspective, the Arctic, when it's melting, is not making sea levels rise because it's swimming ice on water. In Antarctica, the ice is on land, so it's the continent beneath, and when that melts, then it runs into the water and does add to the total volume. And Antarctica is really big, so that's not something we would ever hope to happen, but scientists have calculated what if all of that West Antarctic ice sheet were to completely melt away, and that would cause 5 whole meters of sea level rise, which would flood lots of major cities and places where people live.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think something that's worth noting as well, there's West Antarctic ice sheet and East Antarctica. And the thing is that with East Antarctica, I mean, in Antarctica, generally it's experiencing a lot of warming, but some places in the East Antarctic have even increased their ice cover over the last few years. And that's been used to say, well, Antarctica's fine and climate change isn't a problem. But then scientists have shown that the West Antarctic ice sheet, in contrast, is indeed in huge danger. And there's also been research showing that it's not been stable in the past. So by comparing the species distributions across the coastline of West Antarctica, they've seen that there have been seaways through the ice sheets just in the past couple thousand and 100,000s of years, which I suppose in Earth's history seems long to us, but in Earth's history is pretty short. So I think this is something that people are pretty concerned about because it's an unstable ice sheet and can contribute up to 5 meters, which if you think about the past, 16 to 21 centimeters that the sea levels have already risen, that is not a good number to think about.
Yeah, also when talking about sea level rise, it's not just the water level that rises, but also if we have storms and storm surges, those are getting much higher respectively. And since we also have larger and more common storms because of climate change, that means every time there is a storm, the storm surge is going to be a lot higher and cause even more destruction. So that's another problem with sea level rise. What is the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide out of these four? Or like in general, but okay. Yeah, well, the biggest single source is actually energy production, because even though it's possible to produce energy by renewable resources such as solar power and wind power, actually most of it right now is produced by the burning of fossil fuels. So that's coal, oil, and gas, which contribute a lot to greenhouse gas emissions. Deforestation and the meat and dairy industry together are about 1/3 of global emissions, but 2/3 come from the combustion of fossil fuels. How much of the world's consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to the richest 10% of the world's population? Yes, that is correct. Almost 50% are produced by or caused by the consumptions of the richest 10%. And if the richest 10% of the world were to reduce their living standards, or just adjust their living standards to the ones of an average European, that would cut global emissions by about 1/3. So it really, overconsumption really does need to be reduced in order to get anywhere with this.
Yeah, and that really brings in that aspect of climate justice, right? Because those
yeah,
people.
I was going to talk about it after the next question.
Oh,
Because
right.
like that. But yeah, absolutely correct. So in comparison, how much is attributed to the world's poorest 50%? Yes, also correct. It's only 10%. So exactly like you said, Rebecca, that's one aspect of what we call climate justice, is that those that are contributing the least to global emissions are often the ones that that carry the highest consequences of climate change. There was an amazing panel yesterday at Youth-A-Thon about environmental racism, and that also flows into there. But it usually is poorer communities that are hit hardest by storms and floods and droughts and all of those things, and also don't really have the means to adapt to these circumstances, but are often displaced or even killed by these effects. But that also explains that overpopulation, when someone says overpopulation is the problem with climate change, that's not really the case, because those countries that have the least like population growth are usually the ones where actually the emissions are coming from. So that's really something to think about, that we need to reduce our consumption and adapt more sustainable systems and lifestyles, and not look at the poorer parts of the world in that way. Yeah. And now, how much, I think I already said that. Maybe you remembered how much of the world's emissions come from agriculture and land use. And that does include all of the aspects of a change of land use. So like deforestation in order to plant. Yeah. 23%. A lot of that also comes from meat and the meat and dairy industry, because that takes a lot more space compared to plant-based resources. In order to produce the same amount of calories in meat, it takes a lot more space than to produce those in plant-based sources. And finally, how much, I also already said that, I should have remembered my questions before talking. How much of the excess heat has been absorbed by the oceans? Yeah, two remembered. 90%, over 90%. And of course it spreads out through the oceans because the oceans are really large, but still that's an enormous amount of heat. And it has at least the same devastating effects in the oceans that it has on land, if not even more devastating when, for example, looking at coral reefs. So when we talk about climate change, we really should be thinking about more than just what we see in front of our front doors, but also how does it look like in the ocean, because there the effects are often already much larger than what we see otherwise.
And I suppose just thinking of adaptation as well, because the sea temperatures have been historically quite, at least in those places where sea temperatures have been quite constant, so in the tropics and at the poles, those organisms and those animals and plants would be the least adaptable to climate change, and potentially those that could, be most hard hit the fastest.
But that was our quiz, and on third place we have Bronze Badger, and second place is Social Raven, and first place, drum roll, is Dynamic Panther. So congrats.
Yay, Dynamic Panther.
Congrats to everyone who made it this far, and feel free to brag about your results on social media or anywhere else. But that's about it for our session. I think we're quite on time as well.
Yeah, we did have one question for you guys over on YouTube. The question that we had is, this is all really great to know all of these fun facts, and especially the climate change ones can be really heavy. Facts are sometimes the most illuminating, but also some of the things that make us go, okay, I don't want to know anymore. So, what do you guys do to either, take action when you hear things like this, or stay hopeful, or just can kind of continue your work, especially right now when things, are already a little weird on our planet, and there are some other big things happening.
Okay, I'll go first. Lydia and I are both fairly involved with climate action. So I've been involved sort of when I was studying in university and also back here in Singapore. To be honest, yes, I think it's really important that each of us lives more climate-friendly lifestyle. So that can be things like reducing your meat consumption and reducing the number of times you travel by plane. But also ultimately, these industries, the oil industry and the fossil fuel industry, those are the ones that are, industrial emissions way outweigh domestic emissions. And I think when we press for political change and the political will to have even more things like carbon tax, or to phase out fossil fuel industry, or to even pump investments into renewables, those are the things I think and I think that there's so many people who are increasingly realizing that individual action is great, but it's not enough. And how can we as young people create the world we want to see? So Lydia, what thoughts did you have?
Yeah, that was very well said. I completely agree. For me, it really helps to find other people who feel the same way, because it does weigh on you reading report after report after report of this is going to die and this is really bad and this is worse than we thought. But finding communities that are trying to create change, and that can be all kinds of different things. For me, it really is climate activism, because I want to be out there on the streets and shouting at everyone who's not listening. But there's different ways to take action, and I feel like the most important part is that you're not doing it alone, but that you're finding other people who have the same goals and supporting each other on the way. I feel like that's what gives me strength, and also determination to always go on with the fight.
I feel like during my quiz, a lot of my questions, I kind of just ended and said like, oh yes, this is bad. And things that are happening to our world and the natural world are not good, but it's definitely important that we stay optimistic and that we find other people. And you're so right, Lydia, this anxiety can get quite overwhelming, and it can weigh on you a lot. And I really think that connecting with other people and sharing those stories of hope can really help.
That was awesome. I feel like I learned so much. Can people still play this? For those who are tuning in afterwards, who are watching us, this will all be recorded and kind of put into little videos and clips. Can people still play the Kahoot after this is over?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you can just go back to the recording and then just write down your own little answers, or just think it in your head. We'll look at whether we can just share the link with people as well, so that they can host Kahoots for their friends if they want to host the same quiz.
Yeah. No, that's great. Like I said, I'm ready to quiz all my family and friends and people I know. I'm just going to walk down the street and be like, hey, do you know how many teeth sharks lose? And it's not that they have that many, they grow new teeth. But thank you both so much. And Portsea, who wasn't able to stay with us the full time, and the other members of the climate change group of the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council. I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your passion and your knowledge. We loved the Kahoot. We have people in the chat saying that they loved it. So thank you guys so much for that. And to Dynamic Panther, ? I think that was the winner. Congrats. Keep going on, changing the world with your knowledge about conservation and animals. You guys will see Rebecca a little bit later, I think in a couple hours.
2 hours.
2 hours. She knows what time. So definitely stick around for that. But thank you both so much. Thank you so much, Lydia. Thanks, Rebecca. You both are awesome.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thank you, and have a great rest of Youth-A-Thon, everyone.